Bickie had just stumbled back into the storeroom after doing his part at Ferguson School for the Thanksgiving program, and there, as he was adjusting the lantern hanging from the ceiling, he saw some more rocks, but the most important thing was he saw the big white thunder egg. Hank Collins had brought it after all. It just had not been used in the program out front in the school. He wondered what would he do. He was not going to let it go. He took it and he shoved it over in the corner against the wall, and he began to think, what can I do? There was only one door out of the storeroom, and that was right back into the classroom, so he couldn't go that way. He said, well, I'll just sit here and wait until the program's over. So he waited and he waited. Miss Kitty came back. She said, Bickie, are you all right? Are you feeling well? And he said, I'm fine, Miss Kitty, just catching my breath back here. She said, okay, the program will be over in about an hour, so come on back out then and you can say goodnight to everyone and everyone can congratulate you on the fine part you did tonight. So he waited, and he knew that in an hour, kids would start bringing back props, they'd start bringing back decorations, and Hank Collins would come to get his stones. What would he do then? About an hour went by, and finally he heard people starting to clap and applaud, and the program was over. He heard the closing song, and the door to the storeroom began to open, and he looked and he looked, and he reached over and grabbed the stone and held on to it. It was Soldier Rudolph and Red Hog Smith. He was so relieved. Oh, Mr. Smith, Soldier Rudolph, I found the stone that Hank Collins stole from us. And he began to tell the story and show them the stone. And just as he was saying those things, who should walk in the door to the storeroom but Miss Kitty and Hank Collins? Hank Collins looked over and he said, what are you doing there, young fella? That's my stone. I'm just trying to protect my rights. Bickie looked up at him. He said, Mr. Collins, you stole this stone from us. It was in our house. Red Hog Smith said, yes, I'm sure that's the boy's stone. It looks just exactly like the one they had and the one that you took. Hank Collins went over and he began to try to get the stone from Bickie, and thinking about all the money he could get for that special stone. And Bickie and Red Hog Smith and Rudolph were thinking the same thing. This stone must be valuable if Hank Collins wants it so bad. He reached over and he tried to get the stone. Soldier Rudolph said, wait, let's be careful here. But just as he and Red Hog Smith began to try to separate and get the stone, it slipped and it fell right on Hank Collins' foot, and he began to jump and howl and say the most awful words that anyone could ever say, especially in front of the school teacher and this young boy. And he sat down and he was holding his toe and he said, oh, what are we going to do? Oh, that's my stone. I want it back. Soldier Rudolph went over and he picked up the stone and he said, I think we'll just hold on to this. Mr. Smith, here, you keep the stone. Tomorrow we will take it to Marshalltown and get it cut. Then we'll know the value from the man there who cuts the stones. He can tell us what it's worth, and we'll settle up with you, Mr. Collins. If you want to ever see your stone again, be at Marshalltown tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Everyone went home that night. Bickie was thinking and wondering what could be so valuable about that stone. Uncle Dirk had told Soldier Rudolph, find the stone. Maybe there was something special in it. He drifted off to sleep. During the night, he heard a noise and he thought surely it was a dream. But in the dream, he thought he saw someone kind of feeling around in the house looking for something. It was very fortunate that Red Hog Smith had taken the stone to his house and not left it at Bickie and Tommy and Mother and John's house, because Hank Collins had tried to sneak in and get it back in the middle of the night. Well, it was school vacation, so the next morning, they all met at Marshalltown at 11 o'clock. They met at the geode cutter's shop there, the stone cutter's shop, and he picked it up. He said, this is a very good one. It feels heavy. I think you have a very valuable stone here. Red Hog Smith was there. All the Rosses were there. Soldier Rudolph showed up, and they began to talk about what could possibly be the value of this stone. Hank Collins walks in and he's kind of limping with his sore toe. And so they began the work. They put the stone in place and the blade began to work. Bickie began to wonder what will happen. Maybe when the stone gets cut, it'll fall and there'll be silver and gold that comes spilling out and we'll be rich. Finally, the stone was cut and the two halves fell apart. It was kind of nice. It was good to look at, but it wasn't beautiful and polished yet. And even more than that, there was no gold or silver or jewels in anything that had fallen out of the stone. It looked just kind of ordinary, except it was pretty. The stonecutter kind of wiped his head. He said, well, you've got a very valuable, beautiful stone here, but it's going to need polishing. That'll take a few days. So why don't you come back and I'll tell you about it then. Soldier Rudolph spoke up and said, well, we'd like to kind of get it settled a little bit now here with Mr. Collins. Could you tell us an estimate of what it's worth? So the stonecutter kind of looked, and he said, well, I would say it's worth about $4.50 for each half. $4.50. Soldier Rudolph said, okay. So he took $1.50 and he paid the stonecutter for cutting the stone, his half of the price. He took $7.50 out of his wallet and pocket and paid Mr. Collins and said, Mr. Collins, I need a receipt for that, please. So Hake wrote out on a scrap of paper a receipt, and then Soldier Rudolph said to Hake Collins, also, I want that $9 deducted from the mortgage amount that Miss Ross still owes you. And he said, oh, okay, we'll do that. So they walked out on the porch of the store and they said, well, now, what do we do? We're right back where we started. We cut the stone. Uncle Dirk said, find the stone, but there's nothing extra special, even though it's a beautiful stone, nothing extra special about this stone, certainly not worth hundreds of dollars, which we still need $204.03 to pay the mortgage. There must be something else back there at the cellar, must be something else that we've overlooked. And so John said, everybody will meet at the house tomorrow morning, and we're going to go over that cellar very carefully and see what we can find. And everyone agreed. So Red Hawk Smith went home. Soldier Rudolph went back to the boarding house he was staying at. The Rosses all went back to their house. And Bickie fell asleep, wondering what would happen tomorrow. They met out at the house. The following morning, Mother got up. John, they rigged up a big stew pot, filled it full of water, because as they were working, they realized that the ground was still frozen. In fact, up on the main level of the ground above the cellar, there was still over a foot of snow. Down in the cellar, there was a little bit of snow from some of the night before. Mother had come and the boys had helped. They swept out the snow and they picked on the ground with their shovels. About that time, Soldier Rudolph came, and they had several shovels for Soldier Rudolph and John and even Mother to work when they could. And they began to chisel away and work their way through the ground. They said, this is too hard. So they took hot water and poured it, and it would thaw it down several inches, just enough to get their shovels in, and they began to throw it up. And they pour some hot water and dig a little, pour some hot water and dig a little more. And they would shovel and look and shovel and look. And they had covered almost the whole cellar. And they said, oh, so far we found nothing. Well, we're almost done. Let's finish. So they poured a little more hot water and shoveled and threw some mud. And they were just starting to dig in another spot when Bickie and Tommy, who were standing off to the side, noticed in the last shovelful of mud something a little different. Bickie went over and moved in the mud, and sure enough, there was a brown leather bag. He shook it and he said, oh, there's something in here. He took it over to Soldier Rudolph and to Brother John and said, here, look. Soldier Rudolph's eyes got big and he said, oh, what is this? It's a leather bag. He pulled out his knife and he started to cut it open, and he said, well, let's wait. This bag really belongs to Miss Ross. Let's take it into her and tell her what's happened. And so they went in, and she showed him the bag, and he began to open it and cut it and open it and cut it. And just as he opened it and cut it, some beautiful yellowish looking stones rolled out on the table. Soldier Rudolph looked at it, and Mother looked at it, and Bickie and Tommy said, oh, some more stones. And Soldier Rudolph said, no, these aren't just regular stones. These are pure raw gold nuggets. Your Uncle Dirk, A 49er in California must have brought a bag of these back, and this is what he was pointing to. Bickie had such sharp eyes, he saw that bag over in the corner and brought it over, and here was a bag of gold nuggets. Mother and John and Tommy and Bickie and Soldier Rudolph were all thrilled to have these nuggets. Mr. Ross looked up at Soldier Rudolph and said, "What do you think these are worth?" He said, "Well, I've had some experience with this in the past. My guess is it's probably worth between $1,500 and $2,000. Mother was so happy and John was so relieved. Now they could pay the mortgage. They could rebuild the house. They could buy some seed corn to get a new start the next year. So they went in to town the very next day and sold the nuggets, and they brought a lot more than $2,000. Miss Ross said, "Soldier Rudolph, how can we ever thank you? What could we ever do for you?" And he said, "Let me come back and visit, and sometime I'll be able to sit here with you, have a good home-cooked meal, look at the beautiful stone that was just cut, and enjoy the pleasures of God's mercy." As they looked at the stone, Bickie's thunder egg that had been cut, the shape and the pattern remind them of angels' wings. And Mother said, "We will always keep this stone here in the house to remind us of God's kindness and mercy and taking care of his people."